Welcome to it. We want to say welcome. This is Everyday Lessons now. We're back and we're back with a bang. This is episode plenty. I can't remember. We're over 10, but we are here nevertheless and bringing you all those great food for thought lessons that we do each and every week and things that you can take anywhere. You can take it to the workplace. You can take it home. You can even take it to your Bible study to discuss amongst friends. And this is what we're here to do. It's Everyday Lessons. And it's all because of a book we did a couple months ago called Emotional Intelligence. Everyday Lessons in Emotional Intelligence, a Caribbean Perspective. And it spawned so much different things. And it's not like we're not burned out. We're so excited to do so much more. We have so much things on the heels of that. But we are here every week to bring some nice info, some nice juice, some good vibes. We entertain you with a great conversation and make sure and educate you in the same space. So I want to say welcome and hello, Dr. Amala. How was your weekend?
It was pretty good. How was yours?
It was nice. It was nice. You know, we're getting things done. Well, the Christmas season is over and you know how we're doing this thing. We just flowing, continue flowing.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. So today I read an article that I kind of wanted to share with you and our listeners because a couple of episodes ago we spoke about mindset and how important mindset is in terms of growth and in terms of, you know, having you progress in whatever your personal and professional goals are. And so I found this article on McKinsey.com, and McKinsey, for those who don't know, is probably only the largest management consultancy firm in the US. And they have satellite offices all over the world as well. So what McKinsey does, because they work in industry, they would do research on topics, and most times academics would get into that research. So you would go to McKinsey, you'd look at what is the latest thing that they're researching, and then you can pattern your research off of that so that academia gets a voice in the space. And this one that I found was actually quite interesting. And it is looking at, let's see here, 6 problem-solving mindsets for very uncertain times. And we actually live in very uncertain times.
That is correct. Very, very uncertain.
Very uncertain. So I wanted to share that because we had discussed it prior. And I just wanted to, 1, show our listeners that, you know, the content is current, and 2, give them things that they could use when they find problems that, you know, they may have difficulty solving. Now, these problems, and we're going to articulate most of the problems, we will try to put them in a way that people actually understand them. So whether those problems are at work, at home, at school, at your place of worship, whatever, we'll try to give you an example from each set so that you understand what it is they're trying to get you to do and you can relate it. So it's not just something that is arbitrary, it is related to your life as well. It really is an everyday lesson. So they start by saying that great problem solvers are made, not born, which means, again, like emotional intelligence, it's not something that you need IQ for. You can train yourself to be a great problem solver. And they found that with decades of researching leaders from different businesses, nonprofit, policy sectors, whatever, there are a couple of things that stand out that these leaders do. And so those are the things that I wanted to share with you. So when you're faced with an inscrutable problem, and inscrutable is a big word for unsolvable or a problem that you cannot figure out how to...
Inscrutable problem.
Think. Yes. So if you're faced with an inscrutable problem, try a more creative approach. And I liked it because we talk a lot about creatives because you operate in that space. And as authors too, we operate in a creative space. And so sometimes you have to find a way that is unconventional to solve a problem.
Correct.
So from that space, the first thing that they speak about in mindset is being ever curious about every element of your problem. So once you've identified that problem, whatever it is, stay curious about it. So for us, we always talk about going down a rabbit hole. So once we find something, we just keep going and going and going, and we find other things that are related to it. And sometimes, you know, you end up, you start by looking at one thing and then you spend hours afterwards and you're like, wow, this is where I am on that. So be ever curious. So that speaks to having the mindset of a child. and you have children, you know that they forever ask you why. And so what you want to do, if you have an issue, you want to know, well, why is this like this? How can I do something different? What can I do different? You know, and you want to ask things like that. Why is this so? What are the conditions that this thing is operating under? And so if I had to think of, you can think of like a general problem. Perhaps you want to figure out, like in your case, let's use a realistic example where we're now thinking of in the Caribbean, because a lot of carnivals would not happen. What are some of the ways that we can have entertainers make money? We can have the general populace be entertained.
That's the people in the arts on a whole. That's the people that are surrounding the arts on a whole, yeah. All stakeholders in the arts, not just entertainers. We're talking about from the vendors, the
right. So that's what I'm saying. Because people, the general populace needs to be entertained. They want to pay to come out to these shows and whatever, but you have to find, how do we find ways to solve the problem of not being able to assemble fully, not being able to have, in your case specifically, carnival on the road.
Right.
What are some of the things that could be done? And so you'd want to look at it from that perspective in terms of being ever curious. Because if you tell a child, hey, we can't have carnival, we've had carnival for decades now, we're not going to have carnival, and they're going to ask you all the why questions and what can we do? But my friend said that they're having carnival, because there's always that part of it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Mommy just had one. That's the argument. That's gonna be the argument. Mommy had one and they were successful.
Right.
And we didn't see any spikes coming out from Miami. So what could we do to mirror Miami to have the same effect?
Exactly. So if we're ever curious about it, then those are, you know, those are some of the ways that we can think of how we get that engine of curiosity going. The second one is to tolerate ambiguity and to stay humble. So we always think, or we like to think, that this is the one solution that's going to work. So what are some of the things that could work? Would you consider this? Would you consider that? Would you consider something else? You know, let's try to be ambiguous about the solution, because there may be several different ways that you can solve a problem.
True that.
And stay humble, because you may not be the person as the leader that comes up with that solution.
And that is a big problem in the West Indian community for a lot of things, where egos get inflated and it causes problems. Like, for instance, a topic we were speaking on briefly, NFTs, and how beautiful it can be for the NFTs to work in the space of the Caribbean amongst, like, the soca artists. And from all the research that's been going into, it's not a single man project. It's something that has to be collective, and that's where the issue comes in, because who is going to be the leader of the collective? That's the argument. That's the question. Is it going to be an ex-artist? Is it going to be a tech guy? And nobody wants to everybody wants to be the leader of the initiative, as opposed to just being a partner on the initiative. So yes, you're very correct.
Yeah, so we have to try to figure out, you know, it might not be linear. It might not just be straight A to B, but we may have to do some zigzagging and come back, you know, to see how best we can get something like that solved. I think if it's because it sort of started in the reggae industry, right? They're ahead of
with NFTs. Oh yeah. There's a couple of entities like Buju who is doing some of his merchandising. But again, reggae and dancehall is in a different space to soca. So I'm guessing that it's going to be a little easier for them. They already have Grammys. They have a genre on iTunes. They're different things. We don't have a genre yet on iTunes, so it's going to be difficult to put a soca NFT in a space. So we're going to have to create this space, and that's the discussion that's happening now.
But I'm hoping that what can happen in that situation is that they can look to what this Buju one is going to do, and then sort of act from there, you know, because there'd be a precedent set, and maybe there's some things that could be followed, but who knows. So again, tolerate ambiguity and stay humble, because if you want to learn, then perhaps one of the things that you could do is learn from someone who is already in the space, you know, and just embrace the fact that you don't know it. And maybe there could be some problems.
Or just embrace the fact that somebody did it first and you are willing to continue in the same space.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with that at all. The third one, which I like a lot, is to take a dragonfly eye view. So a dragonfly, if you remember from integrated science all those years ago, dragonflies have two compound eyes and they have thousands of lenses. And so they're able to look, think of them like sitting on top of the world and really seeing everything from, yes, sort of like a helicopter approach to it. And if you take that view to any problem that you have, you're able to look at it, because I always ask, what are the lenses that you're looking at things from? So when people start arguing about stuff, when people are upset about things that are happening on social media and, you know, whatever, well, okay, what is your approach?
That's my
How
argument.
are you looking
I always say the same thing. And sometimes I tell people, take a step back and change your lens.
Right.
Let's change your lens. Let's try looking at it from a different point of view. And maybe you might understand why that person is upset or why they're not upset. Because sometimes people get upset with someone for not being upset.
Right.
You know, that happens too.
Why are you not affected by this?
Exactly. And then I'm not affected because I can then articulate that, listen, I'm not affected because this is how I see it. And if you, as you said before, step 2, if you humble yourself enough to understand, well, okay, let me just change the lens a little bit. No? And, oh, okay, cool. I'm seeing what it is you're seeing. And then we could kind of have a better conversation.
Right. So number 3, guys, take a dragonfly eye view of whatever your problem is. Consider looking at it with 1,000 different lenses. Just have a completely different approach and things may be a little bit different. Number 4 is to pursue occurrent behavior. So occurrent is, the definition for occurrent is something that actually happens. So now you're not in a hypothetical situation like, oh, well, what happened? So back to your example, Miami had a carnival. So that is something real, something tangible. We can go back, look at the numbers. We can see how many spikes we've had, whatever. There is a real example that we can go back to. So you want to use your problem and look at things that already happened. So things that you can see tangible examples for. Use that approach. And so even with children, you know, when they're asking all their why questions, you probably do have some examples that you can go back and say, okay, well, we're not going to do this because, or this is the approach we're going to use because, you know. So as long as you can give examples of factual stuff and not say, well, hypothetically speaking, if we did this, then maybe not. So using this approach to problem solving would probably be a good one. Then number 5 is tap into the collective intelligence and the wisdom of the crowd. And that is something I really like, because as a storyteller, you know, you want to remember when we used to have all those Anansi stories, and we still do. You know, you was that?
I'm saying there's still some Anansi stories we still
do.
Yeah, it's not as, I think this new generation doesn't enjoy to appreciate it as much as we did, but it's still there.
Yeah, so if you tap into the collective intelligence, meaning, and I like collective intelligence now because this new project that we're working on, I mentioned that, you know, we tapped into collective intelligence because we were able to interview people from different circles and, you know, speak to them about different questions that we wanted answered. And so the information that we're going to present in that project comes from collective intelligence. We really sourced the wisdom of the crowd.
Yeah.
We've asked a number of people these questions and then, you know, sort of put the data together. And to me, it makes a big difference. It really does. So if you want to look at what has gone before you, you know, it's really like crowdsourcing your problem. So you have a problem and you call everybody together. You say, guys, listen, this is our problem. And how do we solve it? So it speaks to not always wanting to be the authority on things. You know, you shouldn't necessarily want to have the last say. Well, yes, the buck stops here. Yes, it must stop with someone. But because we're looking at different approaches and you want to be flexible because these are uncertain times, these are very uncertain times, you may just want to tap into that collective intelligence and the wisdom of the crowd. So ask other people, how would you solve this? If were you faced with the same problem, what would you do? If this were your organization, what would you do? If you had to come up with a way for us to host Carnival safely, for us to make sure that, you know, everybody in the chain gets some funding, gets some money, is able to get some revenue, what would you do? So those are the things that you want to be asking as leaders, because you have people who are in your care that need to be
correct,
need to get their revenue up. The last one is show and tell to drive action. So again, we started with children, and we're going to go back to children, because children, you need to show and tell them why something is going to work or is not going to work. They don't just generally take your word for stuff. And one, I like an example that I read about this group that wanted funding for coastal water. And what they did before they started the presentation, they filled 17 buckets with water and put it at the front of the room. So people are coming into the room and they're saying, but what is this for? Why do we have this water lined up here? And they were able to say that to support the restoration of the oyster reefs, they were able to say that one oyster is able to clean 17 buckets of water a day. So if you keep those reefs clean, so they got the point across. Yes. So you could show and tell. Now imagine you just stand there and you give the information. It's like, oh yeah, okay, 17 buckets of water. Nobody is thinking of the volume or the size of the bucket or anything. Everybody would probably have a bucket of a different size in their head, So I think that was an effective way to really show and tell. And so if you have a problem at work, or at home or wherever.
Anyway,
if you bring people together and you say, well, listen, guys, this is what I'm talking about, and you show them the effect that whatever decision could have.
That's the Black Lives Movement.
Exactly.
Black Lives Matter movement. That's people coming together to show an effect that, listen,
exactly.
We have an issue. We've been having an issue, but no, it reaches this pinnacle, and this is why we're here. This is why we're doing this. And like everything else, you're going to get pushed back. They encountered a lot of pushback, but the message was seen and heard.
Yes, exactly. So guys, those are the 6 problem-solving mindsets for very uncertain times. Just so you know, you don't have to be rigid, and you also don't need to come up with anything on your own. There are things that have been invented, and we don't necessarily have to
reinvent.
We can stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. Yeah. So I'll just recap them for you before we wrap up. The first is being ever curious about every element of your problem. So think about it from a couple of different ways. Research it, go down that rabbit hole, spend some time doing that. The second is having tolerance for ambiguity, so maybe there may be another way to do this. Let's see. The third, have a dragonfly eye approach. Look at it from thousands of different lenses, because there isn't just one way to do that.
And that is something not only that looking at it from different lenses could work in just about every aspect of your life as well, guys.
Absolutely.
So you can think about you doing that at the workplace. You're having and it's great for conflict resolution as well. If you can just try for one day looking at things differently. If you continuously have a battle with someone, just trying looking at approaching the person different. I always say, start by saying good morning. As simple as that might sound, I always tell people, because you work in a workplace, some people work in an environment where you don't like the girl who works in accounts. You don't know why you don't like the girl who works in accounts, but you never tell the girl good morning.
Right.
That one morning you go to work and you're pleasant, hi, good morning. She answers, hey, good morning. A conversation could be sparked, and in that moment you realize the girl from accounts, not that bad.
Exactly.
You understand?
She's a normal person.
She's a normal person. So yeah. And number 4?
Number 4, pursuing occurrent behavior. So you want to do things that happened before. Use those as examples. Number 5, tapping into collective intelligence and the wisdom of the crowd. So acknowledging that the smartest people are not necessarily in your room. Pull other people in, because somebody else might have a great idea. And number 6, practicing show and tell. Practice and show and tell. Yeah.
And just like that, guys, just like that, we done.
Yes, indeed.
Just like that, we finished. And you can take these lessons, and as I say, everything we talk about, that's why we say it's everyday lessons. You can use this in your everyday life, in every aspect of your life. At home, in your relationships, in your relationship with your friends, co-workers, your significant other, anybody. And you can apply all the lessons we talk about and every day, and it can help. And I'm telling you, it can really, really help once you apply it the right way. All right?
Yes.
So
indeed.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of it again. For our next week, catch you all the same time on the same frequency. Remember, everydaylessonsnow.com and streaming on feelthebassnow.com as well. All right? So we leave you like this each and every week. Any closing words?
No, that's it. I think I'm good.
All right. So let's take a shake shoulder before we go. Catch you guys next week. Music done. We gotta go. Bye.